What would you do if the family you loved turned you into their unpaid servant year after year, then expected you to cook Christmas dinner for 20 people all by yourself? For me, that was the moment everything snapped. They thought I'd show up like always, apron on, ready to slave away in the kitchen while they laughed and drank in the living room. But this year, I had a different plan. And when they discovered what I'd done, their jaws dropped to the floor. My name is Claire Donovan, and at 34 years old, I've built something most people in Portland would kill for a thriving event planning company that transforms ordinary gatherings into unforgettable experiences. Everbright Events, my baby, has organized everything from tech moguls' weddings to Fortune 500 corporate galas. I've been featured in Portland Monthly 3 times, and my Instagram showcases perfectly curated tablescapes that make Martha Stewart's look amateur. Yet, somehow, in my family's eyes, I'm still just single Claire, the one with nothing better to do than serve their every need. I live in a restored Victorian in the Pearl District, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the Willamette River. My office occupies the entire second floor, where mood boards and fabric samples cover every surface, and my assistant fields calls from clients willing to pay 5 figures for a single evening's perfection. But none of that matters when my phone rings at 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and it's my sister Monica needing an emergency babysitter because she forgot about her book club. Monica, 2 years older than me, has 2 kids, Emma and Jake, who I adore, despite their mother's presumptions. She lives in a suburban McMansion in Lake Oswego with her husband Brad, who sells medical equipment and thinks my job is playing with flowers and napkins. Monica stays home, which apparently means she's busier than the president and certainly busier than her single sister who just plans parties. Then there's Ryan, my younger brother by 3 years, who managed to produce 3 children before his 30th birthday. He works in finance downtown, the kind of job where he leaves at 5 p.m. sharp, but somehow can't manage to help with anything family-related because he's exhausted from providing for 5 people. His wife, Jessica, is sweet, but enables his laziness, always making excuses about how hard he works while she juggles the kids alone most weekends. At the center of our family dysfunction sits Helen, our widowed mother. She's 68, in perfect health, plays tennis 3 times a week, and belongs to more social clubs than I can count. Yet somehow, she's perpetually helpless when it comes to anything requiring effort. The computer needs updating, call Claire. The garden needs weeding before her book club arrives. Claire will handle it. Someone needs to organize Dad's memorial dinner every year. Well, Claire doesn't have kids to worry about. Dad. God. I miss him every single day. Thomas Donovan was the only person in our family who saw me as more than a convenience. He'd been a contractor, built half the commercial buildings in Southeast Portland, and taught me that hard work meant something. Claire Bear, he'd say, his Irish accent still thick after 40 years in America. Never let anyone make you small. You're meant for big things. He died 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, and with him went my only defender. After Dad passed, the family dynamics shifted like tectonic plates, and somehow I ended up at the bottom of the pile. It started small, picking up groceries for Mom because she was too sad to shop, watching the kids so Monica could process her grief at the spa, helping Ryan with Dad's paperwork because numbers weren't his thing. But grief excuses turned into habits, and habits turned into expectations. The irony is that I'm the most successful one among us. My company employs 12 people full-time and countless contractors. Last month, I organized the governor's daughter's wedding. I own my house outright, travel to Europe twice a year for inspiration, and have an investment portfolio that would make Ryan's jaw drop if he knew. But because I don't have a husband or children, my accomplishments are somehow less valid, my time less valuable. You're so lucky to have all that freedom, Monica loves to say while dropping her kids at my door on a Saturday morning without warning. It must be nice to only worry about yourself. If only she knew how many 60-hour weeks I pull, how many client calls I take at midnight, how many times I've had to reschedule my own life because family always comes first. That's what Dad taught us, except somewhere along the way, I became the only one who remembered the lesson. The cycle has been spinning for 5 years now, and I've been too paralyzed by guilt and obligation to stop it. After all, I'm the capable one, the organized one, the one without real responsibilities. Every therapist I've seen has told me to set boundaries, but how do you build walls against the people who share your blood, who knew you when you were 7 and afraid of thunderstorms, who still set a place for Dad at Christmas dinner even though his chair remains empty? But this year, something was going to be different. This year, I had a secret that would change everything if only I could find the courage to share it. The examples of how my family exploited my goodwill could fill a book thicker than War and Peace. Just last month, Monica called me at 6:45 a.m. on a Sunday because she'd completely forgotten about her college roommate's wedding in Bend. Could I watch Emma and Jake for the entire weekend? She'd already told Brad they were going, already packed their bags. What was I supposed to say that I had plans to finally use that spa gift certificate from last Christmas? So I canceled my massage, postponed my date, and spent 48 hours playing referee to 2 kids hopped up on sugar and YouTube. Ryan's requests were more insidious, always framed as quick favors that morphed into massive projects. Hey sis, can you just look over this presentation? You're so good with design. 3 hours later, I'd rebuilt his entire quarterly report from scratch while he played golf with clients. Or my personal favorite from 2 weeks ago, a text at 10:15 p.m. that read, "Kids have science fair tomorrow. Can you whip up something about volcanoes? You're creative. Jessica's having a migraine." I stayed up until 2 a.m., building a papier-mâché Mount Vesuvius that won second place. Did Ryan thank me? He sent a thumbs-up emoji. But Helen, our dear mother, had perfected the art of manipulation to a science. She'd call with a shaky voice, claiming she couldn't figure out how to pay her bills online, knowing full well I'd drive 40 minutes across town to help. Once there, I'd discover a list of small tasks waiting reorganize the garage, update her iPhone, plant new bulbs in the garden, review her insurance policies. "Since you're already here," she'd say with that innocent smile that fooled everyone but me. The worst part, they'd gossip about my life while demanding my help. Monica once asked me to alter her dress for a charity gala while simultaneously lecturing me about my commitment issues with men. "Maybe if you weren't so focused on that little business of yours," she said while I literally had pins in my mouth, hemming her designer gown for free. Ryan joked at Thanksgiving that I'd probably die alone surrounded by color swatches and seating charts, then asked if I could plan his anniversary party in the same breath. Meanwhile, my little business was exploding. I'd just signed a contract with Nike to handle their product launches for the next 2 years. The Seattle Times wanted to do a profile on female entrepreneurs, featuring me on the cover. I'd hired 2 new coordinators and was considering opening a second office in Seattle, but when I tried to share the Nike news at our monthly family dinner, Helen changed the subject to Monica's PTA presidency within 30 seconds. They treated my success like a hobby, something cute I did to fill time until my real life began, which apparently meant marriage and babies. Never mind that I made more in a quarter than Ryan made in a year. Never mind that my clients included senators and CEOs. Never mind that I'd been invited to speak at the International Event Planning Conference in London. In their eyes, I was still just Claire, the reliable one, the single one, the one with time to spare. The breaking point should have come when I missed the conference in London because Ryan had a crisis. Jessica's mother was sick, and they needed someone to watch the kids for a week. A whole week. I lost a speaking fee of $10,000 and the chance to network with industry leaders from around the world. Ryan's response, "It's not like you have your own family to worry about. We really appreciate it, though." The "though" felt like an afterthought, thrown in to soften the blow of his casual dismissal of my life. But I kept going, kept showing up, kept sacrificing. Why? Because Dad would have wanted us to take care of each other. Because family means everything. Because guilt is a powerful drug. and I was addicted to the hope that one day they'd see me as more than their personal assistant. I'd lie in bed at night, planning conversations where I'd finally stand up for myself, finally say no, finally demand respect. But morning would come, the phone would ring, and I'd fall back into the pattern like a trained seal. My therapist, Dr. Martinez, said I was enabling them. "You're teaching them how to treat you," she said during our last session. "Every time you say yes when you mean no, you're reinforcing their behavior." She was right. Of course. But knowing something intellectually and changing a 5-year pattern are two very different things. I started keeping a journal of every request, every sacrifice, every moment of my life I gave away. By November, I'd filled 3 notebooks. Looking at those pages, seeing my life reduced to a series of favors and emergencies that weren't mine, something inside me began to shift. The anger I'd been suppressing for years started to bubble up like champagne shaken too hard. And this Christmas, I decided the cork was finally going to pop. This Christmas was supposed to be different. For the first time in 5 years, I had someone to look forward to. Ethan Mitchell had entered my life 7 months ago at a charity auction I'd organized for the Portland Art Museum. He was bidding on a Chihuly sculpture, and I was trying not to stare at the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed at the auctioneer's jokes. He was an architect, owned his own firm, understood the demands of running a business, and most importantly, he saw me as Claire the successful entrepreneur, not Claire the family doormat. We'd kept our relationship private, a delicious secret I hugged close to my chest. Ethan wanted to meet my family, couldn't understand why I kept postponing. Christmas. I'd finally promised him. "You'll meet them at Christmas dinner." I'd planned everything perfectly. I'd cook an incredible feast that would showcase my skills, create an evening so flawless that even my family would have to acknowledge what I brought to the table, literally and figuratively. And then, with Ethan by my side, I'd finally feel like an equal member of the family instead of their staff. I threw myself into preparations with the intensity I usually reserved for million-dollar weddings. I sourced organic heritage turkeys from a farm in Yamhill County, ordered specialty wines from my favorite importer, found Russian caviar for the appetizers. I spent 3 days making ornaments by hand, delicate glass baubles with each family member's initials in gold leaf. I even tracked down the exact brand of Christmas pudding Dad used to order from Ireland, paying express shipping that cost more than most people's entire holiday budget. On December 20th, I arrived at Helen's house at Adama to start decorating. I'd taken the entire week off work, the first vacation I'd had in 2 years, to make everything perfect. The 12-foot noble fir I'd personally selected stood waiting in the living room. I spent hours stringing lights, each strand perfectly spaced, each ornament hung with mathematical precision. The mantel became a masterpiece of pine garlands and burgundy ribbon. I even restored Dad's old train set, the one that hadn't run since he died, and set it up around the tree base. By 4 p.m., I was exhausted but satisfied. The house looked like a magazine spread, and I still had 3 days to perfect the menu. I was in the kitchen, making one last cup of coffee before heading home, when I heard voices from the dining room. Helen, Monica, and Ryan must have come in through the garage. I was about to call out a greeting when Monica's words stopped me cold. "God, can you believe Claire's going all out again this year? It's like she has nothing better to do." Monica laughed, and I heard wine glasses clinking. "At least we don't have to lift a finger," Ryan added. "She'll cook everything, serve it, and probably clean up too. Remember last year, she even made separate meals for each kid because of their preferences." 20 people this year, Helen chimed in, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. "The Hendersons are coming, and the Watsons. Thank goodness Claire doesn't have plans. Can you imagine having to actually cook all that ourselves?" My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it through the wall, but they kept going, each word another knife in my back. "The best part," Monica said, "is she thinks we're going to be so impressed when she introduces that boyfriend of hers." "What's his name?" "Ethan." "How did you—" Ryan started. I saw texts on her phone when she was babysitting last week. She left it on the counter. Monica explained, casual as anything. Some architect, probably another workaholic who'll dump her in 6 months when he realizes she's married to that company. At least she'll still be available for holidays, Helen said, and they all laughed. Actually laughed. Though honestly, I don't know why she tries so hard with these men, at her age, with her lifestyle. What does she expect? She should just accept she's the single aunt, Ryan added. Every family needs one. Someone has to watch the kids and host holidays. Better her than us. I stood frozen, my hand gripping the coffee mug so tight I thought it might shatter. 5 years of suspicion crystallized into brutal certainty. They didn't appreciate me. They expected me. I wasn't family. I was free labor with a genetic connection. Every sacrifice I'd made, every event I'd missed, every opportunity I'd passed up meant nothing to them. Worse than nothing, it was simply what I owed them for the crime of being single and successful. Should we at least offer to help with something? Ryan asked, and for a moment, my heart lifted. Why, Helen responded. She loves doing this stuff. You know, Claire, she'd be offended if we tried to help. Besides, she's got nothing else going on Christmas Day. We're doing her a favor, giving her purpose. The mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the tile floor. The voices in the dining room went silent. I didn't wait for them to investigate. I grabbed my coat and purse, stepped over the broken ceramic, and slipped out the back door. I made it to my car before the tears came, hot and angry. 5 years of suppressed rage finally breaking free. I drove home on autopilot, their words echoing in my head. Single aunt. Nothing else going on. Doing her a favor. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the tears had dried, replaced by something harder, colder. They wanted me to cook for 20 people. Fine, they'd get their meal, but it wouldn't be served by their dependable doormat Claire. This year, they'd finally learn what happened when you took someone's love and turned it into an expectation. I sat in my car for 20 minutes in my own driveway, engine running, hands shaking with rage. The rational part of my brain kept trying to make excuses for them. Maybe they were joking. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe they didn't mean it the way it sounded. But their laughter kept echoing in my ears. Casual and cruel. The sound of people so comfortable in their exploitation they could joke about it over wine. When I finally made it inside, I poured myself 3 fingers of the expensive whiskey I saved for special occasions. This qualified. I was either mourning the death of my delusions or celebrating my impending freedom. Maybe both. I called Samantha, my best friend since college and the only person who'd been telling me the truth about my family for years. They said, "What?" She practically screamed through the phone after I recounted the conversation. I could picture her pacing her apartment in San Francisco, her red hair flying with every indignant turn. Claire, I've been biting my tongue for 5 years, but honey, they don't see you as family. They see you as staff they don't have to pay. But they're my family, I said weakly, the whiskey not quite numbing the hurt. No, sweetie. Family appreciates you. Family reciprocates. Family doesn't laugh about using you while drinking wine you probably bought. When was the last time Monica watched your non-existent kids? When did Ryan help you with anything? When did your mother come to your office just to see your success? The silence stretched between us. We both knew the answer, never. You know what really pisses me off, Samantha continued. You're brilliant. You built an empire from nothing. You have clients begging to work with you, and these people have reduced you to their personal caterer and babysitter. You deserve so much better. After we hung up, I sat in my home office, surrounded by vision boards for upcoming events, photos from gorgeous weddings I'd planned, thank you cards from grateful clients. This was who I really was, not the pathetic single aunt they'd invented, but a successful woman who made magic happen for a living. The contrast between how my clients saw me and how my family saw me was so stark it felt like whiplash. That's when the idea started forming, crystallizing from pure rage into something more refined. They wanted their free labor. They'd get exactly what they deserved, a perfect Christmas dinner they didn't have to lift a finger for. Except I wouldn't be the one serving it. I opened my laptop and pulled up the contact for Maison Blanc, Portland's most exclusive catering company. The owner, Philippe, owed me several favors after I'd recommended him for 3 high-profile events. I typed out an email, my fingers flying across the keyboard with newfound purpose. Philippe, I need a Christmas dinner for 20. Your best menu, the one you did for the governor's mansion last year. Full-service delivery, but here's the twist: delivery only. No servers. No setup beyond basic placement. Everything in professional catering boxes, labeled and ready to heat. Send the bill to me, but deliver to this address. I typed in Helen's information. Then I thought about the kids. It wasn't their fault their parents were assholes. I added another paragraph. Also include 5 kids' meals, the organic chicken tenders, mac and cheese, the works. Make sure everything has clear reheating instructions. Simple ones. Philippe replied within an hour, intrigued by the unusual request, but happy to accommodate. The total would be nearly $4,000 more than some people's entire holiday budget, but less than what I'd spent on ingredients and decorations already. I confirmed the order with a smile that felt foreign on my face after the day's revelations. Next, I went through the house, gathering every decoration I'd ever made for Helen's home. The hand-quilted tree skirt that took me 3 months to complete. The vintage ornaments I'd restored after finding them at estate sales. The ceramic nativity scene I'd painted myself during a particularly lonely December. They didn't value my time or effort. Fine. They could have a Christmas without any trace of my personal touch. I was loading boxes into my car when Ethan called. Hey, beautiful. Just confirming dinner with your family next week. Should I bring anything? I stared at his name on my phone screen. This wonderful man who actually valued me, who praised my ambitions instead of dismissing them. Actually, there's been a change of plans. How do you feel about Santa Barbara for Christmas? Instead of family dinner. He sounded confused but not upset. I'll explain everything tonight. But trust me, this is going to be the best Christmas gift I've ever given myself. If you're sure, he said slowly. Your family won't miss you. I laughed, and it came out bitter and sharp. Oh, they'll miss me, just not in the way you think. After we hung up, I made one more call, to the Bacara Resort in Santa Barbara. Ocean View Suite, 5 nights, spa package included. I'd spend Christmas morning getting a hot stone massage while my family figured out how to reheat gourmet food without their personal servant. The final touch came when I sat down to write the note I'd leave with the caterers. I went through dozens of drafts, some angry, some hurt, some vindictive. But in the end, I kept it simple. You were right, I don't have anything important to do on Christmas. So I made other plans. The dinner you expected has been handled, just not by me. Enjoy figuring it out yourselves. For once, you'll have to manage without your single aunt with nothing better to do. Merry Christmas. I sealed it in an envelope marked Helen and set it aside for Philippe to include with the delivery. Then I opened another bottle of whiskey and toasted to myself in the mirror. Here's to boundaries, I said to my reflection, and to the family who's about to learn what they've lost. The next 3 days were a masterclass in strategic revenge. I moved through my preparations with the same precision I brought to planning a senator's wedding. Except this time, the event was my own liberation. Every detail had to be perfect, not for them, but for my own satisfaction in walking away. First, I called Philippe back to refine the catering order. Actually, let's make it interesting, I said, scrolling through their premium menu. Split it into 2 distinct services. The adults get the Michelin star experience, the Wagyu beef, the lobster thermidor, the $70 per bottle wines, full luxury. But package it in your standard catering containers, the ones that require assembly and plating. That's unusual, Philippe said carefully. Typically, for that price point, we include full service. I know. That's the point. They want a gourmet meal. They'll get one, but they'll have to figure out how to plate it themselves. Include instructions, but make them technical. Use all the proper culinary terms. For the children's meals, I went the opposite direction. Simple, pre-plated, practically ready to eat. I wasn't going to punish Emma, Jake, and Ryan's kids for their parents' behavior. I even had Philippe include special desserts just for them, custom cookies with their names and frosting. Next came the systematic removal of my presents from Helen's house. I still had a key from all the times I'd been asked to let in repair people or water plants during vacations. I went over at 2:30 p.m. on December 21st, when I knew Helen would be at her tennis club and my siblings would be at work. Walking through that house was like archaeology of my own exploitation. There was the crystal vase I'd bought in Venice, filled with flowers I refreshed weekly without being asked. The throw pillows I'd sewn to match Helen's new couch. The family photo wall I'd spent an entire weekend arranging, printing photos at my own expense, finding vintage frames at antique shops. I took it all. Not maliciously, these were legitimately my belongings, things I'd made or bought. But their absence would be felt. The living room looked suddenly sparse without my additions. The kitchen lost its warmth without the copper utensils I'd hung on the rack, the ones I'd bought because Helen mentioned once that she liked copper. I even took the spice rack I'd alphabetized and the specialty olive oils I'd stocked. The Christmas decorations were the most satisfying to remove. Without my handmade ornaments, the tree looked like something from a discount store, which, I realized, most of the remaining decorations were. Helen had never invested in quality holiday decorations because she had me. The tree skirt was gone, replaced by nothing. The mantel was bare. Even the festive dish towels, yes. I'd bought those too, came with me. I left one thing, a single photo of Dad and me from my college graduation, the one where he's looking at me with such pride it still makes my chest tight. I placed it prominently on the mantel where my garland used to be. Let them look at it during dinner and remember when this family actually supported each other. Back home, I finalized travel plans with Ethan. He'd been remarkably understanding when I explained everything, his anger on my behalf both touching and validating. "They actually laughed about using you," he'd said, his architect's hands, usually so steady, clenched into fists. "Claire, that's emotional abuse." "I know," I said, and meaning it for the first time. "That's why we're going to be in Santa Barbara, drinking champagne on the beach while they figure out which fork goes with which course." I also did something I'd been putting off for years. I blocked my family on my phone for the duration of the trip. Not permanently, but from December 24th through 26th. If there was a genuine emergency, they had Ethan's number, though they didn't know it. But their inevitable cascade of calls when they realized I wasn't coming, those could go straight to voicemail. The final preparation was perhaps the most symbolic. I went through my closet and pulled out every single Claire uniform outfit, the sensible clothes I wore to family gatherings so I could cook and clean comfortably. The aprons, the flat shoes, the jeans with paint stains from helping Ryan renovate his basement. I packed them all in boxes for goodwill. The new Claire, the one who would emerge after Christmas, wouldn't need servants' clothes for family gatherings. On December 23rd, I met with my assistant, Melody, to delegate the few work responsibilities that couldn't wait until after New Year's. "You look different," she said, studying me. "More relaxed." "I'm about to take my first real vacation in 5 years," I told her. "What about your family Christmas dinner? You always do that big, elaborate thing." "Not this year. This year, they're on their own." The smile that spread across her face was knowing. "Good for you, boss. It's about damn time." That evening, I packed for Santa Barbara with the kind of giddiness I hadn't felt since childhood. Sundresses instead of aprons, heels instead of sensible flats, lingerie instead of shapewear designed to hide my figure under cooking-splattered clothes. I was packing for a woman who valued herself, not one who existed solely to serve others. The coup de grace came when I composed one final email to Philippe, scheduled to send at 8 a.m. on Christmas morning. "Please ensure the delivery driver rings the doorbell repeatedly. If no one answers immediately, leave everything on the front porch. The family should be expecting it, though they might be confused. The envelope marked Helen should be placed on top of the adult meal boxes. Under no circumstances should you mention my name if they call to inquire. I also transferred $500 to his company as a holiday bonus for his staff, with a note, for making someone's Christmas liberation possible. By December 23rd at 11 p.m., everything was in place. My bags were packed, my house was secured, my family was blocked, and their Christmas surprise was scheduled for delivery. I stood in my bedroom, looking at the photo of Dad on my nightstand. "I'm sorry, Dad," I whispered, "but taking care of family doesn't mean letting them destroy you. You'd understand if you saw what they've become." I could almost hear his voice in response, that Irish lilt wrapping around familiar words. "Claire Bear, never let anyone make you small. Not anymore, Dad, not anymore." Christmas Eve morning arrived crisp and bright in Portland. Ethan picked me up at 7 a.m., my luggage already in his Tesla, classical music playing softly through the speakers. I'd slept better than I had in months, knowing that in 24 hours, my family would discover exactly what they'd lost. "You sure about this?" he asked as we merged onto I-5 South, though his smile suggested he already knew the answer. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said, watching Portland disappear in the side mirror. "For 5 years, I've been their ghost of Christmas everything. This year, they can deal with the actual ghost of my absence." The drive to Santa Barbara was therapeutic. 8 hours of highway stretching ahead, no phone calls to answer, no last-minute emergencies to solve. Ethan and I talked about everything except my family, his newest architectural project, a sustainable housing development, my plans to expand Everbright events to Seattle, the vacation we were planning to Japan in spring. It was the kind of forward-looking conversation I never got to have during family gatherings, where my future was always discussed in terms of what I lacked rather than what I was building. We stopped for lunch in a small town near the California border, and I finally turned on my phone just to check work emails. Already, there were 3 missed calls from Helen, 2 from Monica, and a text from Ryan that just said, "Mom wants to know what time you're coming tomorrow." I deleted them without listening to the voicemails and turned the phone off again. "They don't know yet, do they?" Ethan asked, watching me over his coffee cup. "They think I'm coming tomorrow morning to cook for 20 people. The caterers will arrive at noon. The realization should hit right about the time the doorbell rings." We reached the Bacara Resort at 4:30 p.m., just as the sun was starting to paint the Pacific Ocean gold. Our suite was everything I'd hoped: panoramic ocean views, a private balcony, a bathroom bigger than most people's bedrooms. I stood on the balcony, breathing salt air, and felt years of tension slowly unknotting from my shoulders. That evening, Ethan and I had dinner at the resort's restaurant, Angel Oak. As we toasted with champagne that cost more than I used to spend on an entire family dinner, I thought about what was happening back in Portland. Helen would be setting out the good china, assuming I'd arrive early tomorrow to start cooking. Monica would be picking out her outfit, the one that would look good in the photos she'd post on Instagram, captioned with something about family traditions, without mentioning who actually maintained those traditions. Ryan would be doing nothing, as usual, confident that everything would magically appear on the table at the appointed time. "Penny for your thoughts?" Ethan asked, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I'm thinking about how they have no idea that Dad's train set isn't under the tree anymore, that the handmade stockings I cross-stitched aren't hanging on the mantel, that tomorrow, for the first time in 5 years, they'll have to actually participate in their own Christmas." "Any regrets?" I thought about it seriously, swirling the champagne in my glass, only that it took me this long to realize I deserved better. That night, in the luxury of our suite, Ethan held me while I cried not from sadness, but from relief. It was like finally setting down a weight I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. He didn't try to fix anything or offer platitudes about family being everything. He just let me feel the full scope of my liberation. Christmas morning dawned spectacular in Santa Barbara, all blue skies and gentle waves. I woke at 6 a.m., out of habit, my body programmed to start cooking. But instead of rushing to a kitchen, I ordered room service eggs Benedict fresh fruit, mimosas, and ate breakfast in bed while watching the sunrise over the Pacific. At 8 a.m., Philippe's email confirmation arrived. Delivery scheduled for noon as requested. Driver has been instructed per your specifications. Joyeux Noël, Claire. I raised my mimosa to my phone screen. Joyeux Noël indeed. Philippe. My spa appointment was at 10 a.m. A deliberate scheduling to ensure I'd be completely relaxed and unavailable when the chaos began in Portland. As the massage therapist worked on knots I'd been carrying for years, I pictured the scene unfolding at Helen's house. The family would be gathering, kids running around, adults drinking coffee and wine, everyone asking where I was. Helen would make excuses at first. Oh, Claire's running late. You know how perfectionists are about cooking. But as noon approached with no word from me, no response to calls or texts, the first tendrils of panic would start. Then the doorbell would ring. I smiled into the massage table's face cradle, imagining their confusion. Catering boxes, an envelope, Helen opening my note with trembling hands, reading it aloud to the stunned room. The gradual realization that I wasn't coming. That I'd known what they thought of me. That I'd finally chosen myself. After the spa, Ethan and I walked on the beach. It was about 1 p.m., and I knew that back in Portland, they'd be desperately trying to figure out how to plate Wagyu beef and lobster thermidor. Monica would be shrieking about the complex French instructions. Ryan would be Googling culinary terms on his phone. Helen would be having what she'd dramatically call heart palpitations, though we all knew her heart was perfectly healthy. The kids, at least, would be fine. Their meals would be simple to heat and serve. They'd probably eat better than they usually did at family gatherings, where they were often forgotten until someone remembered to make them plain pasta at the last minute. You know they're probably melting down right now, Ethan said, his arm around my shoulders as we watched surfers catching waves. I know, I said, and surprised myself by laughing. And for once, it's not my emergency to manage. Back in Portland, the Henderson house was descending into chaos exactly as I'd imagined, though the reality, I'd learn later, was even better than my fantasies. According to my neighbor Sarah, who heard the whole story from Mrs. Watson, who attended the dinner, it started with confusion. When the Maison Blanc delivery van pulled up at noon, Helen assumed it was a mistake. She actually tried to send the driver away, insisting she hadn't ordered any catering. "There's an envelope for you, ma'am," the driver said, placing box after box on the porch despite her protests. "Everything's already paid for. Merry Christmas." Helen's hands shook as she opened my note. Sarah said, Mrs. Watson described the way all color drained from Helen's face as she read it aloud, her voice getting smaller with each word. Monica grabbed the note, convinced Helen was misreading it, then stood there opening and closing her mouth like a fish out of water. "She's not coming," Ryan kept repeating, as if saying it enough times would change the reality. "But who's going to cook? The food's already here, you idiot," Monica snapped, but her panic was evident. They hauled the boxes inside, the guests, all 12 of them, watching with barely concealed fascination as the family imploded. The adult meals were exactly as I'd specified, exquisite ingredients packaged in professional catering containers with instructions that might as well have been in ancient Greek, for all my family understood them. Reduce the fond to create a pan sauce. Monica had to Google fond. Plate using the classical presentation method. Ryan thought that meant putting it on a plate until Jessica pointed out there were actually specific techniques involved. Helen, meanwhile, discovered that without my decorations, her house looked barren. The tree seemed sad and underdressed. The dining table, usually resplendent with my handmade runners and centerpieces, looked institutional with just her plain white tablecloth. She tried to create some ambiance with candles, but realized I'd always been the one who bought and arranged those too. The children's meals were, thankfully, simple enough that even Ryan could manage them. But the kids kept asking where Aunt Claire was, why she wasn't there to play the games she always organized, why there weren't any of her special cookies. Emma, Monica's daughter, apparently burst into tears when she realized I wasn't coming at all. The real entertainment, according to Mrs. Watson's account, came when they tried to serve the adult meal. Monica burned the wagyu while attempting to sear it to medium rare, not understanding that the expensive beef needed barely any cooking. The lobster thermidor came out cold in some spots, overheated in others, because they didn't know how to properly use a bain-marie. Ryan somehow managed to break Helen's favorite serving platter while trying to arrange what he called fancy food in what he thought was an artistic way. But the wine, oh, the wine was perfect, because all they had to do was open it and pour. They went through 8 bottles trying to numb the disaster, which only made the coordination worse. Mr. Henderson later told Sarah he'd never seen such expensive food so thoroughly destroyed. Helen spent most of the dinner alternating between rage and self-pity. "How could she do this to us?" she kept saying, apparently oblivious to the irony. On Christmas to family, Monica was more practical in her fury. "Do you have any idea how much this must have cost? She spent thousands of dollars just to make a point." "At least she sent food," Jessica said quietly, and was immediately glared into silence. The Watsons and Hendersons and other guests tried to make polite conversation, but the tension was unbearable. Mrs. Watson said she'd never been to a more uncomfortable Christmas dinner, and she'd once attended one where the host's husband announced he was leaving her between the soup and salad courses. The children, bless them, were the only ones who adapted. They ate their specially prepared meals, played among themselves, and occasionally asked when Aunt Claire would arrive to do the treasure hunt she always organized. Each time they asked, the adults' faces got a little tighter, the atmosphere a little more strained. By 3 p.m., guests were making excuses to leave. The Hendersons claimed they needed to visit other family. The Watsons suddenly remembered a dog that needed walking. One by one, they fled the disaster, leaving my family alone with the wreckage of their assumptions. Monica's husband, Brad, who'd always been fairly decent to me, apparently was the one to finally say what everyone was thinking. "You all treated her like hired help for years." "What did you expect would happen?" "She's family," Helen protested. "Family doesn't abandon each other on Christmas." "Apparently they do when you treat them like servants," Brad replied, and Monica turned on him with such venom that they ended up leaving too, their kids crying as they were hustled to the car in the middle of an argument. Ryan and Jessica lasted another hour, trying to salvage something from the dinner, but with 2 overtired toddlers and a baby, plus no Claire to manage the chaos. They gave up. Ryan apparently threw what could only be described as an adult tantrum, accusing Helen of driving me away with her demands. "Me!" Helen shrieked. "You're the one who made her do your children's homework. Monica's the one who used her as a free babysitter." The blame game continued until they all retreated to their respective homes, leaving Helen alone in her barely decorated house with thousands of dollars worth of ruined gourmet food and the ghost of every Christmas I'd made magical for them. She sat at her dining room table, Mrs. Watson reported, surrounded by dirty dishes no one had cleaned, and finally understood what she'd lost. Not just a cook or decorator or organizer, but a daughter who'd loved them enough to give everything and had finally loved herself enough to stop. The irony, of course, was that they had exactly what they'd always said they wanted: a Christmas dinner they didn't have to lift a finger for. I delivered precisely what they'd laughed about expecting from me. The only difference was that this time, I'd sent a bill for my services $4,000 worth of reality check, served cold with a side of consequences. The afternoon of Christmas Day in Santa Barbara was everything Christmas in Portland had never been: peaceful, joyful, and actually about me for once. Ethan and I had dinner at a beachfront restaurant where we laughed over fresh oysters and champagne, and not once did I have to jump up to serve someone else or fix someone else's problem. At 8 p.m., curiosity finally got the better of me. I turned on my phone. 43 missed calls, 67 text messages, 19 voicemails, The digital tsunami of my family's panic and rage flooded my screen. I scrolled through them with the detached fascination of an anthropologist studying a newly discovered species. Helen's messages evolved from confusion, "Where are you?" to anger. "This is unacceptable," to bargaining, "Please just call me back," to grief. "How could you do this to your mother?" Monica's were all variations of fury, each text more caps-locked than the last, until the final one, "You ruined Christmas." But it was Ryan's messages that surprised me. They started angry like the others, but his last one, sent at 7:45 p.m., was different. "We really screwed up, didn't we? I'm sorry, Claire. Really sorry." Then came a text from an unknown number. It was Jessica, Ryan's wife. "You deserved better. We all knew it, but nobody wanted to admit it. The kids miss you. I miss you. When you're ready, I'd like to talk." I showed them to Ethan, who read them with his architect's attention to detail. "Are you going to respond?" "Eventually, but not tonight. Tonight is still mine." The next morning, December 26th, 3 more messages had arrived overnight. Monica: "Brad says we owe you an apology. Maybe he's right. Can we talk?" Helen: "The house feels empty without your decorations. Everything feels empty without you." And then, most surprisingly, a voice message from Monica's daughter, Emma, who must have snuck her mom's phone. "Aunt Claire, why didn't you come? Christmas wasn't fun without you. Mommy cried and Grandma was mean and nobody played with us. Please come back." That one broke through my armor. I sat on the balcony, watching dolphins play in the distance, and let myself feel the full weight of what I'd done. Not regret, never regret, but acknowledgement that setting boundaries sometimes meant hurting people you loved, even when they'd hurt you first. I composed one group text to all of them. "I've been your unpaid servant for 5 years, and you laughed about it over wine. I heard you on December 20th. Every word. You got exactly what you said you wanted, a dinner you didn't have to lift a finger for. The only difference is this time, I didn't sacrifice myself to provide it. I need time and space to decide if and how we move forward. If you truly want a relationship with me, it will be on completely different terms. I am not your cook, your babysitter, your decorator, or your personal assistant. I am a successful woman with my own life, and I will only accept being treated as an equal member of this family. Until you can offer that, please don't contact me." Then I turned off my phone again. Ethan and I stayed in Santa Barbara for 4 more glorious days. We walked on beaches, visited wineries, slept late, made love without worrying about early morning phone calls for manufactured emergencies. I remembered who I was when I wasn't being everything to everyone else. When we returned to Portland on December 30th, there was a flower arrangement on my porch, not the grocery store bouquets Helen usually grabbed as afterthoughts, but an actual professional arrangement. The card read, "We want to start over. We want to meet Claire, not just rely on her. Please give us a chance. Love, Mom, Monica, and Ryan." Inside my house, my answering machine blinked with a single message. It was Helen, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Your father would be ashamed of how we treated you, but he'd be proud of you for standing up for yourself. I'm proud of you too. Please come home. Not to cook or clean or serve. Just come home." I stood in my kitchen, looking at the photo of Dad I'd placed on my counter, and made my decision. I would go back, but on my terms. Sunday dinners, not every week. Holidays shared, not serviced. Help freely given, not assumed. Respect required, not optional. 3 months later, we had our first family dinner under the new rules. Everyone contributed something. Monica actually cooked badly, but she tried. Ryan cleaned up without being asked. Helen set the table with dishes she'd bought herself. The kids played with toys their parents had organized. And me, I sat at the table like a guest, like family, like someone whose presence was valued rather than exploited. When Helen raised her wine glass for a toast, her eyes met mine with something I hadn't seen in 5 years: recognition. To Claire, she said simply, for teaching us that family isn't about taking, it's about giving to each other equally. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when they'd slip, expecting me to jump in and fix things. But I'd learned the power of two beautiful words, no, thanks, and slowly, gradually, they learned to hear them. The best revenge, I discovered, wasn't destroying their Christmas. It was showing them exactly what they'd been destroying all along and then having the courage to rebuild something better from the ashes, something that honored not just their needs, but mine too, because that's what Dad would have really wanted. Not a family that took care of each other by sacrificing one member, but a family that took care of each other by seeing each other as equals. It took burning down Christmas to build that, but sometimes the best gift you can give yourself is the match to light the fire. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your own thoughts about family boundaries and standing up for yourself. Your experiences matter, and I'd love to hear them.